September 10th, 2025. Welcome to This Week in Waukesha, the podcast series produced by Civic Media and WAUK Radio, 540 AM, in cooperation with Word Brown, Spiritus Writing. My name is Don Brown, and I am your host. I'm coming to you from the office of former Alderman Don Paul Brown. In our Banting Park neighborhood, our beloved Banting Park neighborhood. I am joined as always by my prodigious young producer, the mighty Max Martinson. Welcome, Max. How are you tonight?
Doing okay, thank you. How are you?
I am fabulous. And I had a guest tonight, a neighbor, a former constituent named Rob Kusner. And Rob is the Joanne and Richard Grigg Professor for the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee's Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. He is the director for the Center for Sustainable Electrical Energy Systems, also known as SEAS, and the site director for the Industry University Collaborative Research Center and the Grid Connected Advanced Power Electronic Systems, or GRAPES, by the University of Arkansas and the University of South Carolina under National Science Foundation grant. Um, so a lot to unpack there with Rob, and Rob really wants to get on here and talk about not only his work but promoting the mission of sustainable and more what they call secure energy, and wants to really attract more young people interested in careers in this area, and a lot more to it. Rob's going to rejoin us next week. He'll be my guest, Rob Kusner, and I think it'll be a really great discussion, but a very deep one because Rob's had some really extensive experiences and really has a lot to talk about with the work that he's been doing. And he's also had some challenges with some cutbacks and some changes in the protocols for federal grants that are a big part of his work. He does a lot of work with the Navy, the U.S. Navy, there at UWM, and he's one of our own here in Waukesha. So um, be sure to tune in for that one next week. But it's probably fortuitous that Rob had an engagement in Chicago that he'd forgotten about. This is like our third night trying to schedule this, but it's rather fortuitous. But yeah, and in a sad way too, given what happened today. There's certainly a lot more to discuss, and it's what we now call the elephant in the living room, and that, as everyone knows, is the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk at a college in Utah this afternoon. Charlie Kirk was killed within exactly 1 month to the day of his 32nd birthday. He leaves behind a wife and two young children, I believe a 2-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son. And no matter what your feelings are about Charlie Kirk, I don't. I've been very outspoken about my nonpartisan nature, although I do tend to lean, I guess you'd say, left of center in most of my politics. But there are some principles of a Republican or conservative theory that I do espouse, and so I'm kind of a hybrid. I jokingly always considered myself biracial because I had Republican parents, but immigrant grandparents who were Union and Democrats, and so I was really influenced kind of by both schools through people close to me, and saw the pros and the cons to them. And Charlie, I will say, pretty far out there for me. In fact, today on the Maggie Dawn show, they had played a recent speech he had given, or within the last few years, and it was about and he likened gun control fatalities to traffic fatalities, deaths from driving on the highway or on the road due to car accidents. And he mentioned that there was like 50,000 deaths a year, or maybe it was last year, or the whatever the year was in question. And he was saying that, yeah, that's a lot, but it's the price you pay for freedom. If we don't have cars and those 50,000 people don't die, but as he says, you also you don't have access to travel, speed, accessibility, flexibility, uh, food, products, other things that you need to survive or want to live, and that's why we still have car travel in spite of the number of deaths. And so we kind of liken that to um, his view of what gun rights should be, and that however many lives were lost, that's the price you pay for having the protections um, that we have with regard to the Second Amendment, and kind of viewed any policy, any inklings towards gun control, smart control, gun regulation, whatever you want to call it. It was kind of a zero sum game for him. No consideration of, well, using his traffic fatality analogy, that with increased education and um, smarter systems, transportations, whatever that is, maybe we could decrease the number of deaths by 10,000 or 5,000 or 20,000, or over time, those numbers could continue to drop. And that same thing with smart legislation regulating guns without taking anybody's right to own a gun, but protecting the majority of us from people that may have mental health issues or just maybe nefarious agendas, like the shooter, the who appears as a professional, as a sniper from 200 yards away, that killed Charlie Kirk. And the fact that he got away with it too suggests you're dealing with somebody, a professional, the kind you see in the movies, or maybe someone you think works for the CIA or some, like, whatever that is. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, get myself in trouble. Um, but anyway, no matter, and Max and I were talking about this earlier. No matter what his politics, nobody deserves to be killed that way, especially those, like Kirk, who had the courage to speak in front of public groups and for a principle that was obviously very controversial to a lot of people, but also had a big following from a lot of people, a lot of young people in particular, and would like to get some of Max's feedback on that as a 20 something, like what the attraction was for him or for the conservative values that he espoused. You can comment on that now, Max, or if you need a few more minutes to think about it, I certainly have a lot more to say. But yeah, go
No, I mean, like, he obviously had one of the biggest student followings, like college student followings in
ahead.
the
Hmm.
United States.
Right,
Um, I like you said, I don't necessarily agree with everything he says.
right,
I think a lot of what he said in the past during speeches and debates are very extreme in a way. Um,
yeah.
but like you said, nobody deserves to
No,
die
yeah,
because of what they believe in. That's
sure,
not only what politics shouldn't be, that's just what America shouldn't be. I mean,
yeah,
if we can't respect the opposition and their policies, their opinions and their debate topics, then
sure,
I mean, what's the point of even having a government in the first
yeah,
place?
yeah. And this, what I'm going to say may very well be controversial, but it's in response to a lot of the social media I was observing today in response to the the Charlie Kirk killing. I mean, people from both sides obviously very upset by it, and certainly again agreeing with you, Max, that it's and myself, that there is no justification for that kind of violence, regardless of anyone's politics. But someone had chimed in saying that, hey, he was a champion for all sorts of all sorts of gun liberations, if you will, or they're kind of the status quo,
Yep.
and and was pretty outspoken, maybe even in a disturbing manner, about what the consequences were, that there was maybe a laissez-faire or nonchalant, or that's life in the big city kind of attitude from Charlie Kirk. And there were some that said, obviously there's some punsters saying it was some liberals that did it, or someone from the left, or there was even some discussion about a possible trans shooter because of some comments he's made about trans citizens. Um, I may be stereotyping here, but I find that highly unlikely. Um, But what some people had opined in social media that a lot of this violence, when you look at ICE and Trump's threats to impose martial law in certain cities, there's definitely a proclivity towards violent action, um, to stop violence, or however they put it. And some said that it very well could have been Trump or a Trump supporter that was behind this, even though Charlie Kirk is responsible for galvanizing so many people to go to the polls for Trump, and a true Trump ally. Um, but one theory I thought was interesting was that someone had mentioned Trump's tendency to stab people in the back, even his closest supporters, if it means if it's a more of an advantage for him. And again, you ask yourself, well, how is that? How does shooting one of his biggest champions, who appeals to so many young people, how does that benefit Trump? I mentioned that Charlie Kirk was killed 1 month from his 32nd birthday, which would suggest that 3 years from now, for the next presidential election, he would be eligible to run for president. And given the following that he has, he could be a very viable candidate that could play the age card with President Trump, and maybe some other things that have gone wrong during the administration that are maybe blatantly obvious and obviously disconcerting to people on both sides. A lot of buyer's remorse from a lot of MAGA people, seeing what this big beautiful bill is doing to their lives, to their incomes, to their benefits. And I think back to, there was an author that was on social media who wrote a book about Pete Rozelle, the NFL commissioner. And I know we're going back here many years, but when Trump started the rival USFL in the spring of, I think the first year was like 1984. After the first year, which was actually a pretty big success for a competitive league, he he being in New York, and Rozelle being in New York, he called Roselle's office and asked if he could get a 1 hour meeting with him. And Rozelle, even though he didn't like him, said, sure, this is a big businessman and a competitor, and I'll meet with him. And I think they met at a hotel or something like that. And Trump told him in a very private conversation that he would, if Rozelle gave him an NFL franchise, an NFL team, he would throw all his partners in the USFL under the bus. He would scrap the USFL in a heartbeat in exchange for an NFL team, and then the competition goes away, for the NFL. And Rozelle, who in this instance you could say was a very principled man, said, wow, that might sound like a good business move, but who's to say you're not going to do the same thing to me in 5 years or 2 years? You're not going to throw me under the bus. I don't want to do business with someone like you. And he said, for as long as I'm alive, you'll never own an NFL team. And as I understand it, all of Roselle's successors, I'm not sure Roger, I forget his name, the current commissioner. I don't know
Goodell.
if Goodell had made that same oath, but I know for sure that Paul Tagliabue did. And so, again, we're using analogies like if we can compare car accident violence to gun violence. We have Trump's history of throwing people under the bus to say that, and again, the fact that the assassin's still at large, a lone assassin from 200 yards away, somehow got away from a college campus filled with students and faculty and security, not including, not to mention, Kirk had a security presence there. How this guy is still in the large and may very likely get away with this, it begs the question. This wasn't just a deranged or a very sick person. They could still very well be, but a person with a lot of experience, military and otherwise, that could pull that off. And so it's all very upsetting any way you look at it. And I guess my final point on this is, if you look at, I saw some photos today of Charlie Kirk and his family. It looked like it was a vacation earlier this summer. Again, a wife and two very young children, a 2-year-old daughter. and a 1-year-old son. And no matter what you think of Charlie Kirk, no matter how much he repulses you, um, it's kind of like that scene in the Medgar Evers movie with Alec Baldwin and Whoopi Goldberg, where Alec Baldwin explains to Medgar Evers' widow, played by Whoopi Goldberg, that no man deserves to be uh, no man deserves to be taken away from his family like that in a violent manner. And it's the same thing with Charlie Kirk. And you think of the sadness of the fact that he won't be there to go to his kids' youth sports games or their school plays or any of their religious rites. I don't know which Christian faith he is, but I imagine there's some sort of confirmation, or to walk his daughter down the aisle on her wedding day, or to attend his son's graduation. Just all these moments are now, have been robbed of that family. His poor widow, and those poor children, and then really will have really no memory, really no memory of their father. And it begs another question: is that if Charlie Kirk could talk on from the other side of the grave, or from what he would he still be dyed in the wool about his feelings about gun rights, or um, would he have wanted would he have vowed for um, a smarter path towards smart gun regulation? And again, it's a political assassination. It was a professional assassination, seemingly. Um, so maybe it's a moot point. Maybe that would have happened anyway if he had a softer stance, or was open to the idea of smart gun regulation. I don't know, but it's tragic because, again, this is a young man with a lot of promise, and obviously very intelligent and prodigious to achieve the success that he's had at only age 32. But that also means as people have the propensity to change too politically, that as he had gotten older, especially as his children are getting older, that he might have changed his tune on some of his policies, and he might have come closer to the center or further to the left, whatever that is. But um, people do have that right to shape and reshape their political agendas as they get older and they see the world through different lenses. I know I have in my late 50s, and it is sad that someone like that with a lot of promise, um, what he could have been, maybe in a good way. Yes, maybe he would have grown older and he might have been the um, same person he was at 31, almost 32. I don't know, but your thoughts and prayers certainly go out to his widow and his family and any of his closest friends and extended family. It is a violent tragedy, and also for the students, the participants in that. I guess it was like a debate or um, I think it was just him and a moderator. But those who witness that and the trauma they're experiencing, my thoughts and prayers go out to them too, and then really hope that I've been told the university has made resources available, and hoping that all the witnesses are taking advantage of the mental health services. As many of my regular listeners recall, um, 2 weeks ago we had Carrie Pennebaker on talking about since September's National Suicide Prevention Month, and promoting good mental health, but also smart regulation, since Carrie had lost his mother to suicide by gun, by gun violence, and that there's got to be a better way. So, but more to talk about as we move forward to the second segment. A lot of things going on. A new candidate has formally announced a run for governor. Some school board decisions for Waukesha County. A new executive director for the Historical Society, and a final touch on the parade memorial. And lest we forget, we also have the anniversary of 9/11 just one day away, as this podcast is being recorded. So much more to cover in part two of This Week in Waukesha. Again, I'm Don Brown. Thanks so much for listening so far. Stick around for round two. So much more to unpack. And we'll see you then. Bye for now. See ya.